All right, I would say let's get started. I'm sure more people will be dropping in the next few minutes, but welcome to the webinar of the Donor Committee and for Enterprise Development, webinar by the Women's Economic Empowerment Working Group. And today we will be talking about transformative approaches to women's economic empowerment in practice, case studies from Africa. From wherever you are joining today, I hope you are and stay safe and healthy. My name is Sebastian Gilcher. I'm advisor at GIZ for Sustainable Economic Development. I'm also a co-chair for the working group. So the DCED, just one sentence, is a network of donors and international organizations that are working in the field of private sector development, and they aim to facilitate and exchange experience in the field of women's economic empowerment and private sector development in general. Within this working group, we have put together a series of webinars. This is the third installment, and there will be one more webinar April or May on the Canada and Sweden's feminist international policies. But today's webinar is about the transformative approaches, and we have prepared 3 inputs, which will be 15 to 20 minutes each. And we have an input from MOVA, from ILO and GIZ. And in the end, we will have enough time and space for a Q&A discussion, which will be moderated by my colleague Cindy. I will introduce each speaker before their turn. So before we start, just 2 small things. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube afterwards, so you can re-watch it or share it with your colleagues. And secondly, throughout the entire presentations or the webinar, you can feel free to use the chat box to post your questions or comments, and we will try to answer most of them at least. And we already have received some very good questions already. If you have some immediate questions after each presentations or questions of clarification, please indicate so, and we will have 1 or 2 minutes to answer them as well. But we try to have the main discussion in the end. So I would say, let's get started. Our first presentation is by Carrie Sylvester from the MOVA project, and it's on empowering women in urban areas. Carrie has been working in Mozambique for the last 35 years. She has long-lasting experience in the field of conflict, post-war recovery, disasters, and for the last 10 years in economic development. Carrie, the floor is yours. If you could kindly share your presentation, I will stop this one, and then please start. Let us know if you have technical problems sharing your presentation, then we can upload it.
Okay, I think that, okay, is that, can people see?
Yes, we can see it.
Fine? Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope all well in your parts of the world. I'll just make a brief presentation about the MOVA program. The context of why MOVA was created, firstly. MOVA works in Mozambique. We're now actually spreading our wings to other countries, but it's based firmly in Mozambique. We're funded by UK Aid, and we're a social incubator, and our mandate was to find ways to improve opportunities for decent work for young disadvantaged women. And I think the space that we moved into when we started, almost, well, 4 years ago, there was a lot of interest in Africa around the potential for the demographic dividend, rapid urbanization, even in a country like Mozambique, and massive gender inequality in accessing labour opportunities. DFID, the UK Aid, were also, I think, quite brave to move into a vacuum of unaddressed questions and a great deal of complexity. And they gave us a mandate to actually be innovative and disruptive, to learn and adapt. So it was an exciting opportunity for us to work with, sorry, it was a very sort of exciting place for us to work. So I just want to give you a very brief overview. It's not an overview of our results or impact, because I go much more into some of the lessons we've learned on a design, in terms of design. But this was just a very quick overview, and people can have a look at the website. So yeah, we're working in the bottom corner of Africa, along the east coast in Mozambique, but we're also, through the replication of some of our initiatives, and now working in other parts of Africa and also in Brazil. So the initiatives that are tested, they're all movers. They're Move Attitude, Move Assistent. There's a whole bunch of mover initiatives or projects. These projects are, they work in the areas of entrepreneurial skills, which is Mover Nexu and Mover Mais. These were working with subsistence, and Mover Mais was working with subsistence entrepreneurs, and Mover Nexu with the next rung up of young female entrepreneurs that we're working with. We're also working in the area of job experience, of recruitment, retention and promotion within the private formal sector and public sector. And we've worked also in the link between transition from school to the labour market. So I think that, just very briefly, the spaces that we've created over the last 4 years is that in the public arena, in the public sector, there's been uptake of one of our programs called Move Assistent into the National Social Protection Programme, which has been very exciting for us, as it means national scale up. There's also been replication by actors in the non-government sector. One of the examples of this is Move Attitude, which is our strong soft skill programme. We also moved into policy dialogue through working with the enabling environment around the girls that we've been working with. And increasingly now, in this last 18 months, we have raised demand from the private sector for the mover approach to female economic empowerment. So that's very briefly about the projects, but there are many more details on the website. What I'd like to present, I think, is the, well, I've called it our distilled knowledge. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but how we try to keep the gender at the center of the design process, and also at the center of practice. And so I'm just presenting a couple of the frameworks that we've used, which have helped us to keep orientated, keep ourselves pointing in the right direction as we've worked through these various projects. So the gender quadrant that you can see on your screens is a very simple, but provides a very complex, can provide a very complex and complete analysis of the problems that we're facing when we're trying to design projects with gender at the center of the equation. So what the quadrant presents are individual, the two at the individual level, the systemic level, and both the formal and the invisible or the informal aspects that are related to any problem. So what we do with this, I just have a quick example to explain. What we do is we look at the problem that we're trying to solve with a problem or with a project or an initiative. We then examine the evidence that we have, and we fill in each of these boxes. So we take into consideration the interplay between the visible, the invisible, the individual and the systemic barriers. In this way, it's possible to identify what these barriers are and address them in the design of the initiative. So how does this work in practice? One of the problems that we face, and I think it's probably common to all of the people around the table, is that women under-apply for jobs, even jobs that they have the requisite skills for. So how do we readdress this inequality in the workplace? How can we readdress inequality in the workplace if women are under applying for jobs, even if they have the qualifications. So what we do with the gender quadrant is that we would look at each of these different spaces. So we would examine in the formal rules and policies, we would look at, are the rules and policies that are barriers to women actually applying for jobs? Is there maternity leave? Are there any proactive policies that can help women to interact better with the jobs? Is there safe transport? Is there security? Are there non-harassment policies, etc.? We'd look then in the, are the resources, so in the resources we're looking a lot at the skills of the women. Do women have skills in this area? Are the barriers to women getting those skills? Are the barriers because of them being women? Or other barriers? So what are women trained? Have they got the resources? Are they going to school? Are they leaving school? Have they got their school certificates? Have they got their technical qualifications? If not, these are barriers obviously to applying. On the other side, on the invisible side, we begin to discuss, well, what is it that's if some of these policies exist, if women are trained, if women do have the resources to apply to jobs, why is it that they're not applying? So is this linked to vision, aspiration? Is it linked to the individual and informal side, the individual invisible side? Is it linked to other societies' expectations of women? Do they have space in which that they can work with the informal norms and the exclusionary practices? So we would go through this process, this analytical process, and we would then look at who's working in which space around the problem that we're trying to solve, and where would mover have added advantage. And so from the quadrant, we create a theory of change, often co-creation with implementing partners, and we begin the process of designing the actual project. So we use this framework to actually frame how we're going to act within that space. And we found it to be very powerful and very accessible. I've done it in very many different spaces, different forums. Okay, so the second frameworks that we have distilled from our experience of sort of 4 or 5 years that we've been working with this is how we look at where we need to invest in order to achieve female economic empowerment. So in Mover, we define female economic empowerment as women having agency to act and improved remunerated economic activities. So those two aspects are important for us in terms of the FE. It's not just that women have remunerated economic activities, but also they have choice, voice and decision making in order to decide what it is that they want to do. So, so we discovered that we needed to work on skills, on women's skills. We needed to work on the opportunities that they have, and we also needed to work on self-efficacy. So we needed to work on self-efficacy, meaning soft skills and employment competencies. So the design of the initiatives took into account these 3 areas, and depending on the initiative and the analysis undertaken, 1, 2 or all 3 of the spheres form the center of action. So I have an example. It sounds all a little bit theoretical, sorry. One of the examples in one of our projects called Mover Attitude, the main innovation took place in the area of soft skills and employment competencies, so the purple sphere. This was the main place at Mover. We innovated in terms of the way in which we could work on soft skills, the instruments we used, and also how we measured whether there was change in soft skills and self-efficacy. Other people provided the skills, so we worked in conjunction with TVET centres and industrial colleges who provided the training skills, and an NGO partner that was the link to the workplace. In another project called Mover Tech, the initiative combined soft skills and technical skills as the core component. So we had a bundle of training, which put together the soft skill training with the IT training, and a private sector partner managed the workplace opportunities bubble sphere. In the most recent of our initiatives called Link, which is a recruitment initiative, Movers specialising in inclusive recruitment and works on soft skills and employability competencies and placement opportunities, with the skills sphere as a prerequisite for application. So it really does depend on our partners, on our partnerships and where we think we have added value. But all three, what we found that if we ignore one of these spheres when we try to design the projects, that the project does not have the impact that we'd like it to have. So somebody has to produce either the skills, the opportunities, or the self-efficacy work for it to work and for us to have FEE. So Movers' primary focus is on transformation at the individual level. So these are these inner circles. But we also recognize that the importance of the enabling environment, which are the outer circles I've just put into the presentation. So we work from the inside out. It's a people-centered program, but we're now able to present evidence and occupy spaces in this enabling environment. For example, we have discussions with the duty holders and gatekeepers that begin the process of transformative change at the systemic level. Concrete examples of this are, for example, we worked for the first 2 years on soft skills in the Mover Attitude and the Mover Tech program, and we're now part of the committee that is working with the national body for TVET accreditation, and they're going to be putting soft skills as a part of the national curriculum. So that if you want to be accredited as having a TVET training, whether it's in to be a mechanic, to be a plumber, to be an electrician, then you need to have a component of soft skills. So we managed to find a place at that table and work with the national authority, because we had this sort of granular knowledge of what it meant to provide soft skills. In the self-efficacy side, for example, we fought many barriers against communities and families not wanting girls to work in non-traditional occupations, and through our project of Mover Green that provided girls with construction and gardening ability, they worked within their own communities, providing green spaces in high density areas. Both family, partners and the whole community finally agreed that girls could make a positive, have these non-traditional jobs, and it's engendering change in the community in terms of gender relations. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope that there'll be some questions afterwards that I can provide further evidence or information. Thank you.
Many thanks, Carrie, and also thanks for sticking to the time. A very interesting presentation. I think especially the quadrant is a very good tool to use in all kinds of gender programs to get a good overview and go a little bit deeper. We have one quick question from the chat to you, because at the map you showed, Zimbabwe was also colored red. So the question was, is Mover implemented there or is it replicated?
Okay, Mover is working with a partner called ACT, working with on looking at HCD, so human-centered design for young entrepreneurs, and we have a partner in Zimbabwe called ACT, and we're sharing across Zimbabwe and Mozambique our tools and our processes of how to implement a HCD program for young female entrepreneurs. So we're working with a partner called ACT.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for this clarification. If you could stop your presentation now, then the next one can share theirs. And to all participants, please keep asking questions in the chat. We will come back to that later. Also, if you have a question to Carrie for later on. So let's continue with the second presentation from the ILO, which is on the graduation scheme and business upgrading for women entrepreneurs, presented by Charlene and Adriana. Charlene is a technical officer at the ILO's Women Economic Development Program since 2015, and she has further work experience for the ILO in informal sectors and fragile contexts. And she has been working with the African Development Bank and UNDP beforehand. And Adriana is her colleague, is a junior program officer also at the Women Economic Development Program, and has prior been working at the Green Jobs Program and has experience in the field of gender, sustainability, and migration. So if I could kindly ask you to share your presentation. I think, Carrie, yours is still there. I think you have to stop.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, now.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
Adriana and Charlene, if you could share your presentation, that would be great. Yes, perfect. So the floor is yours.
Sebastian, for giving us the floor. This presentation will be made by my colleague Adriana and myself, Charlene, and we are going to kind of present to you our new concepts on entrepreneurship graduation and business upgrading models for women's entrepreneurship development. So what we are presenting here are not like factual evidence on what works, but it's rather a kind of presenting you the framework that we are currently piloting in two of our projects in Africa, especially in Tunisia and Somalia, on how we can bring transformation in economies and in society by empowering women entrepreneurs. So this presentation is structured in 5 main points. First of all, I'm going to present to you or to introduce you to the Women's Entrepreneurship Development Program of the International Labour Organization. And then also to give you very briefly the business and the social case on why we are empowering women entrepreneurs. Adriana will take over and then present the challenges to women's entrepreneurship development. And she will also introduce our new initiative, The Business Woman, with its slogan, Her Business, Her Job, where we will also kind of dig a bit deeper and then just to take you through the entrepreneurship graduation and the business upgrading models. And then at the end, I will just release some key takeaways from our experience in developing this concept and the pilot that we are experiencing currently in Somalia and Tunisia. So the Women's Entrepreneurship Development, it's a program of the ILO, and it works to empower and support women entrepreneurs who want to start, manage, and grow their businesses. So the program is located in the SME unit, the small and medium enterprise unit within the enterprise development of the ILO. And there, our role is to see how we can address gender imbalances in enterprise development in order to scale women entrepreneurs' contribution to growth and sustainable development. Our interventions are located at 3 levels. So we work at the macro level, so the policy level, where we bring or we help our constituents to analyze the enabling environment for women's entrepreneurship development, and also to kind of influence policy changes in favor of women's entrepreneurship and economic empowerment. At the meso level, with the market actors, we work with them to kind of develop and implement gender-responsive business development services for women entrepreneurs, and also to kind of be equipped to also train or to replicate all the trainings that we are providing to them, to women entrepreneurs. And at the micro level, so the enterprise level, we work with women entrepreneurs, but through the market actors, we have kind of trained at the meso level so that they can replicate the training and all the support to women entrepreneurs. So why are we doing that? So we are doing that, first of all, because we are the ILO and we need to provide, and we have to provide full and productive employment for all. And our focus on women entrepreneurs also lies in the fact that the private sector generates a lot of work or employment opportunities, and SMEs, small and medium enterprises, especially in the private sector, provides also the bulk of employment worldwide. And there is also a huge potential at the national and the global level in empowering women entrepreneurs and all the changes this can bring to economies. The future of work, the ILO is embarking on its second centenary, and then the future of work and even the attainment of the SDG, this Sustainable Development Goals at the UN and the global level, lies also on inclusive societies where women are given the space to participate meaningfully to growth and prosperity. So this is why we are doing that. And then I will leave to Adriana to take you through the challenges of women entrepreneurs.
Right, so we wanted to contextualize it and share some of the main challenges that we often see when we talk about women's economic empowerment, especially when it comes to women's entrepreneurship. So we often see challenges related to women's technical skills and soft skills. So this, for us, and since we work with women entrepreneurs, this relates to enterprise management capacity, negotiation skills, communication skills. Then a second area that is often cited as one of the main challenges is access to finance. And this comes as a result of high collateral requirements, sometimes having the necessity of co-signatories, and many aspects that feed into this challenge of accessing finance for women entrepreneurs. Related to that is also access to markets, and this challenge comes, for example, in the form of limited access to information on regulations, on where they can sell their products, on other supply chain actors, or even just the physical access to markets is often a challenge that we see. Then we discuss a little bit challenges at the enabling environment level, where we, as it was mentioned as well in the presentation before, things like enabling policies that allow for women's economic empowerment, and specifically women's entrepreneurship development. And finally, underpinning all of this is gender roles and norms that relate to, for example, women's increased burden of childcare, of care work, of household responsibilities, as well as perceived biases on sectors that women entrepreneurs are supposed to occupy, on the safety of making investments in women entrepreneurs, as they're often not seen as viable business ventures for investors. So all of these are kind of challenges that are well known and well talked about, but we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and look at the challenges specific to small-scale women entrepreneurs and growth-oriented entrepreneurs. And when we look at small-scale entrepreneurs, what we see is that the majority are often in the informal economy, and also concentrated in either low-value sectors or low-value segments of value chains that have very precarious working conditions, low profit margins that make it very difficult for them to thrive. For growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, what we've seen is that a lot of the challenges come when they want to scale their businesses. So even if they've succeeded in surpassing some of these challenges and establishing a business, they still can't find the means to grow their business. And what we want is to focus on business continuity and sustainability, because one challenge that is often not talked about when we talk about entrepreneurship development is business continuity and sustainability. Once businesses are established, 3 to 5 years from now, that business might disappear, often related to women's caretaking responsibilities and also child rearing. And our goal is to make both small-scale and growth-oriented women entrepreneurs' businesses productive, profitable, and enabled to participate in the market that they operate in. So for this, we've developed a new initiative, a concept called the Businesswoman, Her Business, Her Job. And the aim of the Businesswoman is to address the challenges specific to these two types of entrepreneurs. And this is underpinned by the ILO's 4 main pillars, which is access to work, so the job creation potential of women entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurship as a viable, sustainable opportunity to work. Then we look at rights at work, which is more on the qualitative aspect of jobs. Social dialogue, so women's ability to participate and influence the policy level. And finally, social protection, which is something that we truly are taking a new focus on, because we've seen that social protection is key to ensuring that business continuity and the sustainability of businesses. And underpinning this model is performance indicators and impact assessment that is not just looking at the economic contributions of women's entrepreneurship development, but also at the social indicators. So what role can women's entrepreneurship play in the well-being of communities, in things like childhood education, nutrition, and just overall this type of aspect of development that goes beyond economic indicators. As this, we're piloting, as Charlene mentioned, in 2 countries through 2 different projects. So in Tunisia, we're having a project funded by Global Affairs Canada, and this project is focused on rural women entrepreneurs, facilitating access to finance, financial services, and helping them also establish and run their enterprises. And in this project, we're piloting the entrepreneurship graduation approach. And this is a summary of the entrepreneurship graduation approach that we are implementing in Tunisia right now. As you can see with the circles, we're really trying to hit the micro, meso, and macro level of interventions to take a systemic view of women's entrepreneurship development. And as a first step, we're engaging in sensitization on entrepreneurship and soft skills. So for this, we're having open days where women entrepreneurs can come and learn about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, learn about the program, be supported to present and develop their business ideas, and where we're also conducting needs assessments. And one key aspect of planning these open days was because a lot of times small-scale women entrepreneurs don't have access to, the internet or other platforms of communication. So this face-to-face time was really crucial. And in terms of enabling this to happen, having consideration over the accessibility of the location where these open days were taking place, as well as the mobility of potential women entrepreneurs, was key. As a second step, we recognized that even though our program is mainly targeting women entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurship is not something for everyone. So we really wanted to give an option for women who did not want to go through the entrepreneurship route and who preferred wage occupation to also reap some benefits. So what we've done is we've linked them to information on the labor market, and we've also created a roster for them to be employed later on by women entrepreneurs that we're supporting. As a third step, with those women who have chosen the entrepreneurship route, we do the traditional kind of entrepreneurship training. And this is through the targeted training that we have at the WED program that targets specifically entrepreneurs with low levels of literacy. And these training packages combine non-consecutive training days as well as coaching, the establishment of peer-to-peer support networks, and they culminate in the development of a business plan. And we really try to make these trainings easy to access for women entrepreneurs, taking into account often childcare responsibilities, household responsibilities, and even these women also have income generating activities to consider. So we space out the trainings in a period of at least 3 months and have 5 training days that are non-consecutive. And when we can, we try to also provide childcare services and childcare solutions for women entrepreneurs who have that additional component to think of when attending the training. As a fourth step, once we've completed step number 3, we facilitate access to finance. And here is where the business plan is key, as this is often presented to financial institutions that we're partnering with to facilitate that access to finance. And we also provide entrepreneurs with financial education. Where possible and where these exist, we also try to link them up with social insurance mechanisms. And finally, the step number 5 is post-project support. So this is to mitigate the risk of business discontinuity, and this takes the form of either accompanying women entrepreneurs to formalize their businesses, reinforcing those business management and soft skills that were acquired in step 3, and also linking them with role models and mentors so that they can continue to have enterprises that thrive and that are more established and less precarious than before. So this is the entrepreneurship graduation model, and I'll pass on to Charlene, who will share a little bit on business upgrading.
Sorry, I still had my mic muted. Yeah, so thank you, Adriana. So for the business upgrading, this is a kind of intervention or concept that we are piloting in Somalia in the Women's Economic Empowerment component of the Public-Private Development Partnership Project, which is funded by DCED, and it's running since last year until 2023. And has for the entrepreneurship graduation, this is also happening in 5 steps. Adriana? Yeah, so this is also happening in 5 steps, and then we are working with growth-oriented women entrepreneurs. So the first step for us is to do a sectoral assessment of women's entrepreneurship development in the country, and we interview women entrepreneurs that we want to support. So we interview them individually, and then we also do a kind of research at the macro level to know the framework conditions to women's entrepreneurship development in the country, but applying a sectoral approach. So we are trying to select sectors that provide opportunities for women entrepreneurs to create jobs for themselves, but also for others. And when targeting sectors, we are not just looking on like high value sectors, but also female dominated and saturated sectors, and then work with women entrepreneurs and other market actors on how we can also create value in those saturated sectors. And the second step is to do what we call a gender-responsive procurement ecosystem. This is also a new concept that we are now testing together with UN Women around market development, where we work with women entrepreneurs, growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, to raise their awareness on the value chain they are operating in, especially on the functioning and also the governance, in order for them to play a major role in the governance of these value chains, and to see to what extent their businesses can contribute to direct jobs, direct job creation, indirect job creation, and also induced job creation. At the end of this process, we develop together with them what we call the value addition plans on how they can maybe move to another tier of the value chain, or maybe play a bigger role or a more meaningful role in the governance of the value chain. And depending on the value addition plan, the third step is about business development and support, when we provide them, depending on their needs, with management training and also managerial soft skills, leadership, networking, and so on, and also help them access markets, and also equip them with relevant tools on how they can manage their growth. The first step for us with them is to also facilitate their access to finance. So we also connect them with financial institutions, and we work with financial institutions at the country level to also develop demand-driven and proper services for women entrepreneurs. But what we are also trying to do with growth-oriented women entrepreneurs is to raise the awareness and then facilitate the access to venture capital and also impact investors, so that they do not have a limited option for them to access finance and then to grow their businesses. The fifth step is about visibility, voice, and representation, because we think that this is very important for women entrepreneurs, especially in the governance of the market. They need to have opportunity to access member-based organizations, and also to kind of organize themselves in women's associations, where they can have a power to raise their voice and also to kind of influence policy dialogue in favor of women's economic empowerment. We also work together with them to organize events and add the mechanisms around networking amongst themselves, but also with other actors in the market, and also to put in place mentoring schemes so that they can also support each other. And for the growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, it's social protection schemes that we are putting forward differs a little bit with the graduation scheme with small-scale women entrepreneurs, which is at the individual level. Here, we are considering women running businesses which employ more than one additional person than themselves. So everything that is related to social protection should also include people working with them. So we try to bring packages for like health protection and accident, for instance, parental protection, being maternity or paternity, childcare services, and also to cover like unemployment, and also to help them establish pension mechanisms, even at the very small scale of their businesses. And what we can take away from these experiences so far.
Problem. So as key takeaways, we really want to emphasize that while the challenges that we see when we talk about women entrepreneurs are common across the board and widely cited, it's that women entrepreneurs have different and diverse needs and capacities. So we really need to target our approaches, make them human-centered, and have them be targeted towards the women entrepreneurs that we're working with, whether they be small-scale or growth-oriented. We also really encourage and have found the sectoral approach to be one that is quite useful, and not only focusing on getting women entrepreneurs to participate in sectors where they're not often participating or that are just high value sectors, but also trying to create value in sectors that seem saturated or that already have a high number of women entrepreneurs. A third point we want to make is that social protection is a very important component for the continuity and sustainability of women's businesses. And it also helps to mitigate some of the negative social and cultural norms and the negative impacts that they might have on women's ability to engage in business and to be able to continue their businesses. So that key base of social protection is very important for both growth-oriented women entrepreneurs and small-scale women entrepreneurs. And any access to some form of social protection mechanism will really contribute to how they are able to grow and manage their businesses. A fourth point is that assessing the performance of SMEs should go beyond that economic indicator, beyond how much their profit margin has increased or how many employees they've been able to hire, but go a little bit beyond that and see what has the impact been on communities, on families, on workers, on the quality of jobs created, and just take a little bit of that social indicators and kind of qualitative approach as well. And finally, the last point we want to make sure of is that the sustainability of our interventions always depends on national ownership and on the capacity of the stakeholders that we work with. So when we implement projects, we really have to make sure to work with partners to build their capacity and to ensure that they feel the ownership of the project. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Adriana. I was disconnected. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's great that you're back now, Charlene.
Yeah.
Thank you for that very good presentation on a very holistic approach, I think. We have a couple of questions, actually. Let me quickly check again which one we do now. I think one question is quite straightforward to answer, is if you're using SYIB, so the Start and Improve Your Business modules in this graduation approach, and if they are specific or if they are the general ones.
Yes, we are using the SYIB, Start and Improve Your Business, and especially the module on Improve Your Business in Somalia, and this module has been adapted to the context of women entrepreneurs in the region.
Okay, very good. There's a larger question from Angelina, which I would leave to the discussions in the end, but just one more quick question. If you could keep your answer brief, that would be great. If you can explain a little bit more about the social protection mechanism for independent entrepreneurs.
Yes, so I think this is very hard to keep brief.
So should we maybe leave it to the discussion in the end then?
Yes.
Okay. So Cindy, the moderator, will surely note these questions down, and we will see how we can answer them in the end. So looking at the time, I think it's about time to move to the third presentation. So if I could, perfect. So the third presentation is on women at work from my colleague from GIZ, who's working in the MENA region, Heina. Heina has been working in the regional project Economic Integration of Women in the MENA region for the last 2 years. And she's mainly responsible for the Pro Girls component, which will be presented today. as well as gender diversity management in Egypt. So Heina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So just a small correction, it's Hania.
Sorry.
Fine.
Thanks for correcting me.
So I just want to thank all the panelists before me. It was very interesting to hear all of that approaches. The project before I start already. So ProGirls is one of the activities of the regional GIZ program, ECONWIN. ECONWIN stands for Economic Integration of Women in the MENA region, that is funded by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ. We operate in 4 countries, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, and Jordan. We partner with private sector companies in these 4 countries in order to win, keep, and promote female talents and to increase the number of females working in the labor force of these 4 countries. And ProGirls is just one of the activities implemented in Egypt to economically empower school students. And in this presentation, we are going to see how professional orientation of girls transforms social norms and behaviors of girls, teachers, and companies in Egypt. So what is ProGirls? ProGirls is practical professional orientation for school students, females. We specifically focus on students in the ages between 14 to 16 years old, because at that age, in grade 9 and 10, they decide whether to study arts or science majors in schools, which later on will decide on their field of study in university and their future career paths. And we partner with private sector companies operating in the fields of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, ICT, IT, and leadership and management positions that are mainly male-dominated in the labor force. And we very much stress on companies cooperating with us that they need to provide a real working experience in the companies through the different professional orientation formats included in ProGirls, which are internships, mentoring, which is female mentoring, where girls would sit with female role models in senior positions in companies to get to know how they reach their positions. And the third format is Girls' Day, which is a job orientation for just one day that takes place in October at the same day of the International Day of the Girl, where the whole idea is just after doing their internships and mentoring during their summer vacation, they would have another chance to visit a new company with a new field and like to do a practical hands-on task for just one day. And lastly, we have school visits by company representatives that is going to be introduced this year between GIZ, the Goethe Institute, and the private companies in Egypt. And just to give like a small overview on the female labor force participation rate in Egypt, actually females accounted for 24.7% of the labor force versus 77% of males, while women in managerial roles are 7.1%, top managers 4.9%, and company owners is as low as 2.4%. On the other side, according to the World Bank report, the number of female students in universities, both public and private, exceeded the number of male students, and especially in STEM. Around female graduates with STEM specialization actually amounted to 48%. And here is the dilemma, that we have a lot of females studying in university and specializing in STEM fields, but they don't actually enter the labor market. And that is how ProGirls is trying to tackle this issue, is to encourage students not just to study STEM fields, but also to work in it and to see that they are not just male jobs. So who are the stakeholders at ProGirls? Definitely we have the school students from 14 to 16 years old from private and public schools in Cairo and Alexandria, 2 cities in Egypt, but they are white-collar students. And we are piloting this year in Alexandria to include students from blue-collar technical schools. And definitely we have the companies, and we have a wide network of companies, including multinationals like General Motors, Vodafone, which is one of the top telecommunication companies in Egypt, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Cisco, DHL, and we also include medium-sized and small companies, in addition to 2 universities also providing professional orientation formats to school students, which are the German University in Cairo and Egypt-Japan University for Science and Technology in Alexandria. And we have the teachers from private and public schools who play a very big role in the project because they act as the multipliers. They also receive training about the importance of professional orientation and how to support girls in applying for the project and to prepare to get the best out of their experience in companies. And lastly, we have the parents who are also invited to our key events to see the direct impact of the project on their daughters, because a lot of times daughters actually, like girls, don't get into the STEM fields because of societal norms, and sometimes the parent would be like a burden or obstacles, not letting their girls become engineers or working in male jobs. So what is the outreach of ProGirls so far? Since the start of the project in 2016, around 400 Egyptian school students participated in ProGirls and received hands-on professional experience and orientation. 87% of these students believe that they will be able to find a job more easily due to their participation. And also 92% of all participating girls in 2019 stated that they feel better informed and prepared for their professional future due to their participation. And more than half of the participating girls would like to work in STEM fields or leadership and management positions after they took part already in the project. As to the companies, we have around 82 companies who have been taking part in the project since 2016 in organizing Girls' Day internships and mentoring schemes. And just to show you a small video that we did in 2018, showing girls in action and doing all the hands-on practical tasks in companies. The video has some Arabic words that will be already translated. There is like lyrics. Translation, I mean. It's shown now, right? On the screen?
No, not yet. I think you have to change which screen or which, if you click on the sharing the screen again.
Now? You see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
الفكرة جديدة وبتدعم قوي البنات ان هم يفكروا في التكنولوجي. It's not about age, it's about gender, it's about cultures or countries, it's about how can we support. We're very interested at Microsoft to join in the ProGirls project. We interest among our female employees to share their experiences with young girls. حاسة ProGirls ممكن يساعدني أكثر في إن أنا أعرف الكارير بتاعي، أعرف نفسي والسكيلز بتاعتي أكثر، فحبيت أشارك. قبل كده وان انا يعني اعمل حاجه يعني دايما الرجاله مثلا هم اللي بيعملوها او كده، كل الناس بيقولوا ان ما ينفعش بنات تشتغل في ورشه، فلا احنا ممكن نكسر العاده دي ونخلينا نحاول نشتغل في ورشه. انا بنصحها وبقول لهم ان هم مشاركتهم في بروجكت زي البروجرز هيبقى على مستوى الاستاف هيستفيدوا وهيتعلموا حاجات كتير. الاستاف هيحس انه قادر انه ينقل خبرته لناس ثانيه اصغر في السن. جو العمل هيبقى فيه inclusive diversity في الكالتشر وفي الايج وفي الجندر وفي الاكسبيرينس. برضه من البروجرامز ممكن يساعدني ان انا اجرب الوركينج لايف. دلوقتي وانا لسه في المدرسه اعرف فعلا اذا كنت انا عايزه الفيلد ده ولا هو مجرد هوب، انا اذا فعلا هو انترستنج بالنسبه لي ولا هخش مثلا مش هلاقيه زي ما انا كنت فاكراه. الماركت دلوقتي بقى كومبيتيتيف والبنات واخده بالها من هم صغيرين ان هم بيحاولوا يحسنوا مثلا الانجليش ليفل بتاعهم، الشغل بتاعهم في المدرسه. لما الجيل ده يطلع فاهم يعني ايه اما يشترك في بروجرامز ويطلع فاهم يعني ايه
مفيش حاجه اسمها لا الست ما تشتغلش شغلانه معينه، او لا الست ما ينفعش تشيل بوزيشن عالي في شركه معينه ولا الراجل بس مريضه. لا، لما يطلع من السن ده مجربه، مش بس يعني هو مش بس ندوه، هي مجربه وعايشه ده، تقدر تواجه ده في المجتمع. ساعدني جدا ان انا عارفه انا عايزه ايه، انا اعرف ابني نفسي، انا اعرف اوصل اللي انا عايزاه، علشان انا فعلا عرفت ازاي اوصل، عرفت ازاي اتعامل مع الناس، ازاي ابقى شخصيه ناجحه، how to be a good leader. كل ده عرفت اعمله من الاكسبيرينس بتاعتي. هي فعلا كانت اكسبيرينس حلوه قوي بجد.
So the presentation is back.
Yes, it's back.
This video always brings me back to tears. It's so interesting to see that different point of view, the teacher side, the school side, and the company side, and the girls, and how that impact them, which already takes me to the next slide, which is what are the results or changes in perceptions and behavior that are already taking place as a result of progress. We have from the girls side that they start to believe that they have the same opportunities as boys in STEM and management jobs. And below are some quotes that are mentioned by girls, that they were supported by amazing women. I would say they were the female role models, that they can now feel they can do whatever job they would like to do, and they experience new work field that they never thought of working in, and they started to see that women can have the same effective role in society as men, and a lot of them were having very direct contact with management, like CEO, and they were starting to see they can become one day in a management position and CEO of a company. And definitely we have from the company side that the companies are more aware of the needs of the girls and females and more welcoming of female employees to the workplace, which is changing a lot of challenging stereotypes. And below are also some quotes from companies who are participating in the project. And I have to mention in this part that we have a very success story in one of our participating companies that were already included in the video. It is the German Auto Service GAS Authorized Service Center for Mercedes-Benz, in which in this company who have been participating for several years and hosting girls during the internships. The girls would go to a workshop that is mostly male dominant, all engineers and technicians, and some of them come from very conservative background. And they, at the start of the project, they were very reluctant to welcome girls and to work and to show them their work, because they believe women actually should sit at home and not just to be doing the same work, and especially engineering and mechanical engineering, which is perceived very much as a man job. But after participating for several years, the company itself started to tell us that the workers started to be more welcoming, and they started to believe that women can do actually the same job as them, and they can start to introduce female employees to work in the future in the workshop that never had any female employee. And the third part, we have the teacher side, that they started discussing gender roles in the classroom and the stereotypes when it comes to job fields. And actually some of the teachers started telling us that they would like to take part themselves in the project in order to understand the practical work life, and to include that, bringing back to the classroom. So for us, that was the transformative changes about the project. And I'm going to leave you now with one quote from one of the girls. And by that, I'm done.
Many thanks for this very interesting presentation and very hands-on approach for transformative change. I think we have one question directed to you directly. I'll just read it out. I like the way you're bridging the gap between education and professions of girls, but did you find out what is causing that big gap?
Yes, so it's actually a lot of factors. Like, for example, some societal, it's not perceived that girls will be working in certain jobs, like working as engineers or working, I don't know, in the desert, in networks and in setting networks or engineering. Sometimes it's just the societal obstacles. And sometimes the companies are not providing a lot of flexible working conditions for women, especially for married women. So it's a lot of obstacles that we would need to encounter, and for that we are partnering with companies so they can see that they are missing out on the female employees, and they need to adjust some of their policies in order to welcome more females into the labor market.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you could stop the presentation now, I think we can go on to the discussion and Q&A part. If I could ask, and I will be the first who does it, if I could ask you to open the video if you can, if your connection allows, and then I would hand over to my colleague Cindy, who is advisor in the sector program Gender and working on issues of women economic empowerment, to lead the discussion now. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank especially the four presenters for the very, very interesting and diverse presentation we have heard. I think it was really interesting to see or to hear from this very different perspective also, from starting from like very young girls to change perceptions and attitude, to very vulnerable women and very different settings and MOVA, to growth-oriented entrepreneurs from ILO. So I have to say, I hope you all hear me very well. We have quite some questions, and I'm not really sure if we managed to get through them all. We will get started, and then at the end we will see how many are left, and we will communicate with the presenters to see if we can answer them afterwards and send them around with the presentations. So should we get started? So we have even received also quite some questions beforehand. So thank you very much to all the participants to have even made their thoughts about before listening to the webinar. Let me start with from the back a bit. Ankita, I'm sorry if I pronounced the names wrong that are set up in the chat, has asked kind of to everybody, how do you create safe spaces for women to ensure that they participate? I don't know, Charlene, do you have safe spaces that you have set up for women in your programs?
Yeah, so I think to participate, participation can be like a physical participation, and also having the opportunity to be informed about the intervention and to be kind of beneficiary of the intervention. So when it comes to physical participation, as we said, for our intervention in Tunisia, for instance, we make sure that women entrepreneurs can have access. So we organize like open events in the location which is accessible to women entrepreneurs, and also at some extent we can also put some facilities to bring them from their location, from their home, or for their location of their businesses to the location where we are holding the interventions. And sometimes also our service providers also go to them just to make sure that they have the full information, and then they can use their available time to take part to activities.
Thank you. I don't know if any, sorry.
So physical, and then the other thing about like to make them aware of the interventions is also to see relevant channels where they can get relevant information about specific programs or interventions. And on this also we rely to women's associations most of the time, and also like very informal associations of women at the marketplace, like open marketplaces, most of the time in the region or the countries that where we operate. And then other mechanisms like churches, things like this, just to make sure that they are able to get information, like hands-on information wherever they are.
Perfect, thank you. I would go back again to Hanya. I hope I say it right. There was another question just for you, saying like, have you encountered any challenges, like also in terms of, yeah, especially when girls and women go into non-traditional sectors, has there been any negative experience you have made also? And are there any maybe measures you have taken to prevent this or to deal with it?
Yes, definitely we encountered challenges, especially at the start of the project. For example, some companies don't, because for example, how we cooperate with companies is that they would send representatives to attend our trainings and to understand how we want the internships and everything to be done. But sometimes when the girls actually go to the company, not all employees are aware of the project. Not all of them understand what is the importance of having young school girls into the company and to do stuff with their hands, and especially like in the workshop. So sometimes other employees might be reluctant to share their information. Some girls, for example, going into the workshop weren't really feeling safe. Sometimes it was like some sort of harassment, but I wouldn't say definitely physical harassment, but feel like they are not really welcomed. So in order to counter that, we did very long trainings for the company representatives and told them how to go around that solution. And also we started training girls how to be ready in any situation and who to get back to. And other challenges we're also facing till now is the engagement from the teacher side and how they would really understand the whole topic. Because, for example, some teachers come from public schools and they have themselves very stereotypical ideas for gender roles, and that women maybe are not suitable for women to come and work in certain fields. So to change that, it requires some time.
So just like following on, and so because it's the next question, so you do you try also to engage with the parents and the boys at school to make a holistic change of attitude and thoughts about gender roles?
To be honest, till now we did not really get very deep into the parents and into the boys, but definitely this year we were introducing school visits by company representatives to go and talk about professional orientation and about the whole topic in schools, and maybe that is going to resonate more with boys and with parents. But also parents, like we invite them to events, but we did not really tackle their change of perception. We leave it like indirectly to be done by the teachers as the multipliers, but in the future we're actually thinking of maybe including parents more, doing like, I don't know, parents evening, so we can discuss the topic and to see the impact on the girls themselves, not just to attend like ceremonial events by the end of the year where they don't really get like full impact.
Yeah. Cindy, could I just jump in there on the sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Carrie, go ahead.
Just in terms of following on from that that answer from Charlene, we had a very interesting, I would urge you to do that, not just the ceremonial side. We had a very interesting experience with Mover, what we call Mover Green, which was a set of girls who were selected from the communities to rehabilitate green spaces within their own neighborhoods. So these are very highly urbanized, highly dense areas. And they were selected to work on construction and gardening, which are both male-dominated professions here in Mozambique. And what was very interesting is that it was at the beginning a little bit like a circus, that the girls were there. They had their first training. They were trained off-site, and then when they went on-site, which was actually within their own communities, it was like a circus with the husbands, the boyfriends, the fathers, coming to watch the girls to see if they could actually do the paving, if they could do it. And it was a very interesting dynamic, as the chief engineer who was there, he became like almost like the mentor for the family members. So he was sort of supervising the on-the-job work, but then a father would come up and say, oh, that's my girl there, and what, can she really do that? And so the engineer would say, yeah, of course, you stay and watch a little bit. So it's a very, very interesting process. And when we did some follow-up work in the Bairro, in the neighborhood, with families, with friends, and with the neighborhood, the attitudes, we'd done some initial work, some baseline work on people's attitudes to whether girls could do things, both girls and boys feeling that they couldn't do this stuff, and the attitudes from family members, from community, from the girls and the boys that worked on the process all changed 360 degrees. Because they'd physically seen them, and the girls were very proud. And so they were in their, you know, their hard hats, their hard boots, etc., etc. And it was very powerful having that in the middle of the community, and the community seeing that the girls were actually capable, and then they became very proud of them. So yes, I would urge you to see if you could get people to actually watch them working in situ, because it's very powerful for the family members, and they become very proud.
Nice, thank you very much. I think this answers some of the other questions who was going into, yeah, how to motivate communities and leaders and husbands and fathers towards this change of women. I think you just said, like, make them participate and see what that means and what change, what their girls, daughters, women are capable of. Perfect. I think since we're with you, Carrie, maybe I keep on going and ask you another question. So there was a question about what is the best way to integrate the female economic empowerment approaches into already existing projects? So when you don't design them from scratch new.
Okay, I think as Sebastian sort of mentioned when I finished my presentation, one of the most exciting frameworks that or instruments that we use, it's not a framework, we actually use it as a living instrument, is this gender quadrant. It's actually for all projects. At any point in the project, you can come back and put all of your information that you have about where you are in your project at the moment, what you've learned, who you've learned it from, and check across the 4 different boxes and see if some of the blockages that you're feeling, or or your participants or your practitioners are telling you you're having within your project, if you're ignoring one or other of those boxes and the interactions between those boxes. And sometimes it can be very revealing, and it is really, I hope it doesn't look like a sort of dangerous instrument, like a tricky instrument. It's really not. It's actually very participatory. People really get into it, and it always pops out very interesting things that people actually know but maybe haven't surfaced about why something isn't working. So, and it can work on all sorts of sides. So it can work on projects that are very much on the right hand side, so very much like rights-based, like programs about working on employment rights and maternity, etc., etc. But then there hasn't been any consideration on the invisible side. So you've been working to push through statutory maternity rights. The companies are on board, but nobody's uptaking the maternity rights. We had this experience in Mozambique, and so the CEO of the company said, "Oh, but we don't have a problem with pregnancy in our company. Nobody, nobody's. You can see from the stats that nobody's taking up the maternity payments." And then the HR woman said to him, "No, it's because they all abandon work before we can give them their maternity rights." So the CEO was quite sort of happy with his statistics, thinking that all of their education around about pregnancy, etc., was working very well, when the HR woman knew that in fact the informal setting within the company and within society meant that as soon as women got pregnant, they were so frightened they would lose their job, or their husbands and boyfriends began to put pressure on them, that they actually abandoned work. So, they had a very nice policy in the hotel, and nobody was taking it up. So unless they worked on the invisible side, it wouldn't work. So these are the sorts of examples, and it can work the other way as well. There are sort of women and violence programs, for example, that work very much on empowering women, individual women, and particularly on the invisible side, on the confidence, aspiration, But if there is no regulatory framework, if there's nowhere they can go to, if they don't have access, if they can't move to the police, if they can't go, then also you can have the empowerment. It doesn't undo the side, like in the hotel, it didn't undo the fact they've got a lovely policy, but it probably won't change your impact if the women don't. They may be very empowered, but if they've got nowhere to go with that, then it won't change. So the quadrant can be very useful at any stage, and we use it as a sense check throughout all of our interventions. We use it to problem set at the beginning to frame the problem, and we use it as a sense check throughout the life of the projects.
Yeah, interesting. No, I think it's a really powerful tool. Also seeing the interrelation between the different barriers, and yeah, what you said. If you don't tackle, or at least have in mind the different dimensions, your activities might not lead to the goal you wanted to. But the maternity protection actually leads me to Charlene. Sorry, I wanted to give you some more time on that question that came up. You said you cannot answer in a minute, so maybe you get some more minutes. The question that came from Kim, a bit more about the social protection mechanism for the independent entrepreneurs you put in place in your program.
Yes, and then before this, I would like to add just a few words on how we can also integrate like gender component in already ongoing like a gender neutral intervention. And I think one of the option is also at the design of the project to leave a space for adaptive management, so that you are aware that the project or maybe the context might change as we move forward in the implementation, and then we should have a space for how to adapt in the event of kind of changes. And then if I want to, so regarding maternity protection for like small scale women entrepreneurs, so what we are trying to do now in Tunisia, for instance, is to have a kind of solidarity between women entrepreneurs, and to also work with service providers, and especially NGOs and financial service providers around this mechanism of mutuelle de santé. So working also with some social and solidarity economy actors to see to what extent, based on the solidarity between women entrepreneurs and peer-to-peer support, they can come up with some concrete mechanisms on how to ensure maternity protection related to replacement plans, especially for women entrepreneurs working in the informal economy, and also self-employed women entrepreneurs. So this is what we are working on currently. So I would say like a solidarity between women entrepreneurs and linkages with service providers on what kind of services can be put in place for that.
Thank you very much, Charlene. And I think just to stay with you, or Adriana, there was another couple of questions on how you start the work with the women entrepreneurs, how you initiate the dialogue, and are there any tools that you have developed to do this dialogue? Or the selection, maybe how you select the growth entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so Adriana, you can compliment me. So I don't want to talk alone, but if you want to take this question, please go ahead. And then I might also compliment you.
Well, I think that I'll maybe share a little bit of what we've done in both of our projects. So in Tunisia, because a lot of the women that we were targeting did not have that, access to internet or access to any platforms, we were always coming up with digital solutions and digital platforms, but in many times women in the informal sector don't have access to these technologies. So that face-to-face interaction was really crucial to reaching our beneficiaries, and as Charlene mentioned, using kind of all means possible to be able to ensure that the information gets to them. For growth-oriented women entrepreneurs in Somalia, we had multiple discussions with our project team there, who were a lot more familiar with the context, for them to sort of guide us on what communication platforms would be most adequate for reaching women entrepreneurs and for informing them of the project and engaging them and selecting them. So for there, we used, for example, kind of radio communications, WhatsApp chains, and just kind of what was appropriate for that context. In Somalia, that type of communication is a bit challenging because of this current situation, but really working with our project team to establish what the most common channels of communication used in each country were very crucial for us. And then for each entrepreneurship program, we have a set of different criteria. and kind of an entry form for growth-oriented entrepreneurs to fill out and criteria in which to benchmark which kind of modules as well of each entrepreneurship training program are most appropriate. And for entrepreneurs in Tunisia, really providing that support. You know, a lot of the times we work with women with low levels of literacy, so how do you ensure that they can also participate is always a challenge that we have, because it's not as easy as asking them to fill out an entry form or to fill out an application or to contact us in this way. So that face-to-face interaction through the open days and kind of supporting them to orally present their business idea and to reach out to us for support in that kind of entry form filling out is also important for us. I think Charlene has more to say, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so when also asking about specific tools, so we will mention these entry forms and also the survey. Sometimes we also organize the survey, and also the word of the mouth, because sometimes also information spread out very quickly amongst the women entrepreneurs. I recall again with the experience in Somalia, you know, when interviewing women entrepreneurs as part of the survey, you know, it was like, yes, I know my friend, my neighbor, and so on and so forth, who also works on the same sector or who has the same characteristic in her business, so she can also come and then try to be part of this intervention, you know, this kind of thing. But in Somalia, for instance, we also released like a call for expression of interest, you know, and then this went through several channels. So basically it will be survey and forms, either in a form of like call for expression of interest released through different channels, but also kind of face-to-face interaction through women's associations, and also where we can find women like marketplaces, churches, and things like this, where women can gather more confidently.
Yeah, thank you. I think we also had the experience like that. If you reach out directly and they see that there is a direct benefit to them, you actually approach women entrepreneurs quite good, and then using all the networks you just mentioned. I think, thank you very much.
Jump in just for 1 second. We're a little bit excited in our new entrepreneur program because we've been struggling with exactly the same issue. And I think my colleagues probably know about this. Have they heard this term about constrained gazelles? We're now working with this idea of constrained gazelles, which is people who are just on the edge of leaping forward, because we're also wanting to work not necessarily with the necessity entrepreneurs, but these what in some of the literature they're calling constrained gazelles. So we're actually in the middle of pilot testing an instrument to try to identify who are within this pool of, we need to get down to 12 entrepreneurs, and we have a pool of 50. And so what we want to try to find are which of them are these constrained gazelles. So I'm happy to share with you as we go forward with testing this, this instrument, to try to see who it is that's got this potential for growth and for job creation. It's quite an interesting concept. That we've recently found, and we're quite excited to try out, because we didn't do very well with the measurement in our first pilot. So we're really trying now to do better. But it's an interesting concept, and we're quite excited. I can put you in touch with the woman who's helping us with the development. Jana is helping us with the development of this instrument for selection.
I think, yeah, this would be very great, because especially what you say, finding the tip growth entrepreneur that really makes it and then has the potential, and knowing what is the characteristics would be, I think, very interesting for many of us working in the field. I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, Sebastian's just saying we have 5 minutes left. Just there was one question, sorry, Carrie, about the gender quadrant approach, and can you Google it? You want to just quickly say where it comes from, and maybe if whoever's interested can contact you directly? get more about
yes, they can contact me directly. It's actually the Gender Quadrant is something that an organization called Gender at Work have developed, and they use it mainly for organizational development. They're an organizational development. They do something called GALS, which is gender action learning with organizations, and we've sort of adapted it in MOVA as a real, as I told you, like an instrument for framing problems, but also a sense check. But if people want to contact me, I can provide them with some more information that we've written about it.
Yeah, perfect. I think you left your contact details on the presentations. I don't remember.
Yes, I did.
The other
Yes, I did.
presenters too. So with looking at the time, I think we're running a bit out of time, and we still have quite some interesting questions. We will get, Sebastian just telling me I could maybe do another question, a small one. I'm not sure if I have a small one, because
okay, maybe
we might open. We have quite really some good ones still open, like how you measure the changes and other financial instruments you have been designed. So I would maybe go back to the presenters. We see who can answer the questions, and then we put them out together with the YouTube video so that everybody can read the answers. Is this okay for everybody?
Yes, that's fine.
I'm actually very happy about so much enthusiasm and interest and questions, and we could maybe talk another hour. So yeah, thank you very much for all your participation. I give the word back to
Thank you for inviting us.
Sebastian.
Well, for me, it's also only to say thank you very much to all the 4 presenters, to Cindy for moderating this. I think we had very diverse inputs, a very good discussion, even peer-to-peer learning now. So also thanks to all the participants, to all the good questions, and also thanks to Amy from the DCED Secretariat, who was organizing everything in the background. And so just 2 small things to say there. If you haven't done so beforehand, check out the DCED website for Women Economic Empowerment. You can just Google it, and there's quite a lot of information there from the DCED working group, but also from all the different organizations that are part of the DCED. Yes, and as I said, the next webinar is in, I think, April or May, and you will receive an invitation soon. Okay, and then thank you again to everyone, and stay healthy.
Yeah, take care. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Everybody take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.